You're listening to MESO, the Mesothelioma Podcast, where support, education, and outreach come together for families facing mesothelioma.
Welcome back to MESO, the MESO Care Podcast. And today my guest is Leslie Cooper. She is one of the investigators. So I'm going to let Leslie introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does for Danziger and Llano and how long she's been with us.
Hi, Anna. Yes, I am Leslie Cooper, and I have been an investigator with Danziger and Llano for 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've been around a while. So
that's not a bad thing. That's
right?
not a bad thing. You know,
back in the old days when I started, I was the age of the client's children. And now I'm the age of the clients.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
So okay,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. What I do is I go and do the initial meeting with clients. So I am going to visit them in their homes, and I actually have a 17-state territory. I have been all over the United States. I've met with clients in all states except for Maine, Rhode Island, and Hawaii. So we do consultations, and we do cases on a nationwide basis. And, that sounds maybe kind of spread out, but what a lot of people don't really realize is that mesothelioma is extremely rare. So it's important to get these cases moving as quickly as possible, to get the results as quickly as possible, and do the best job that we can for our clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How many cases have you had since you've been with D&D?
I have seen roughly 1,000 cases since I've been with Danziger and Llano. Yeah. So you put it that way. That's only like one a month, one a week,
right.
During the course of those years, because that's, people don't realize how rare it is. I think that people have, seen commercials for decades, and it might seem like it's super common, but the amount of advertising speaks more to the value of the cases than the volume of the cases.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get as much value out of every single case.
Absolutely. And each case is actually filed individually. It's not a huge class action case that sometimes we get the calls and they say, I want to be a part of that class action suit, but that's
Right.
not how these cases are filed. Yeah. Am I correct?
Yes. What I tell people is it's not a class action case. It's literally the opposite of a class action case. In a class action case, you have one defendant and multiple plaintiffs. In these cases, our client is our one plaintiff and there are multiple defendants.
Right. Right. So can you, what method do you use to map out the client's work history and how to identify asbestos exposure, not only their work history? I guess what I'm asking is, how do you, when you meet with a client, how do you get all the information you need in order to file these cases?
Okay. So I go chronologically. So I explain to people that we are looking for every manufacturer of asbestos products that they have been exposed to since they were born. Okay. That's why there are so many, defendants involved in each individual's case, and they are all individual. So it's going to depend on who your manufacturers are, how many of them there are. That's going to speak to the value of your case and how much compensation we can get for each individual client. So I go chronologically from the time they were born, because we're looking for things like maybe your father worked at the shipyards and was bringing asbestos home. Maybe your mother worked at an industrial facility. So what you did in high school. So everybody has, most people have an idea. Well, I got this here. Okay.
Right.
You might have got that there, but you might not have got that there. We're not looking for the manufacturer who's responsible. We're looking for every manufacturer who's responsible. Yeah. Okay. So there might be a little bit from when you were growing up, a little bit from when you were in the military, and then your career. and then perhaps household exposure too.
Right.
So I go chronologically and I go over a person's entire life history, looking for every single possible source of asbestos exposure that I can find.
And obviously, the reason we do that is the more that we can identify, the more compensation we can get the client.
Yes.
Because we're looking out for them.
Yes.
And there's a lot more possibilities than they think. And you're right. I've talked to individuals where they said, "Oh, I know exactly where I got it." And then you look at the age of the individual, and they're, 52 years old, and we're like, okay, let's step back and look even a little further. And there's a purpose to what you do and why you do that. So, let's kind of, you talked about, the trust funds and the manufacturers. What can you explain, or can you address the asbestos trust and how that all works?
Sure, because I think that people are they're a little bit surprised when they find out all that's involved in this, and it's it's actually very interesting. But you'll hear people will hear or see commercials that are saying there's this big huge asbestos trust, and that's not necessarily true. That figure that they're giving, like the $80 trillion, is actually the sum of all of the trusts combined. So there are dozens of manufacturers who have filed for bankruptcy and have to put money into these, have to set up a trust to compensate, people who are diagnosed with mesothelioma. So there's a number of them. So again, it's not like you can call them up and say, call this trust up and say, I have mesothelioma, please cut me a check. Okay. It's our job to identify who these manufacturers are. It's our job to identify who all the manufacturers are, whether they're bankrupt and have a trust or not. Okay. So there's no possible way that a person can do that. And when people tell me, oh, I don't know, and you're never going to be able to figure it out. And I'm like, do you want to make a bet? We're going to figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
You have no idea how the reach of our investigative tools are.
Right.
We will find out. So it's just important to go over the life history, turn over every stone, look for every possibility, eliminate situations as well. And people are, very shocked with what we come up with.
Right. No, they don't realize that there could be the secondhand exposure from a family member. And they don't even realize how many products were made with asbestos.
Very true.
Your mom could have a hobby, and she was, making pottery, and she had the huge, is it a kiln that you use?
Yeah.
And so that had asbestos, and you don't think that your hobbies that you had or other areas, because they didn't think about how many companies actually used asbestos products. So it's really important. And typically I try to let people know before they meet with you, it's really important that you think about all the areas that are potential. And I know as you're going through, your questions, you said that you start from when they were young. And the purpose of that is, sometimes once someone is talking about, their life, they start to realize that, wow, I do remember, something like that. I remember talking to someone, and they said when they were young, their dad removed all the insulation out of the attic, and they threw it out in the front yard, and the kids were playing in it. Little did they know it was asbestos insulation. And they said, wow, I totally forgot about that when I was a kid. And so this is what you do. You try to get them to try to remember different things. And as you're going, chronologically, a lot of times they don't remember the actual dates, but when you point out, well, was that when you had your first child? And it's kind of helpful to get them to, oh yeah, that was in 19 59 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's true. So the things that you do or the questions you ask are for a purpose. We're constantly trying to help them, as we've said, and you've said, everybody said, the more we know, the more compensation we can get for that particular client. And that is our job to do that.
Yes.
What is the average time that you spend with a potential client?
Okay. So the amount of time that I am going to spend with a client is largely going to be based on how they feel. Okay. Some people are going through treatment. Some people have just recently been diagnosed and are just getting over, the biopsy and the pleurodesis and, other situations like that. And other people still feel 100%. So I can complete my portion of the investigation, the initial investigation, in about 2 hours. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I'll sit and talk with somebody for 5 hours. Sometimes we'll go out to dinner. Okay. It depends on how the client feels. It really
Exactly.
does. Yeah. But one thing, a lot of times people are like, when I'm giving them the third degree, when I'm going over their life history with them, they'll say, well, I don't remember. But when I come and I ask questions, it jogs their memories.
Exactly.
So I tell them, you know what? You can't tell me right now. I'll bet you tonight you're going to be washing the dishes and you're going to say, oh, now I remember.
Yeah.
So it just gets those juices flowing and, gets their memories back together a little bit better. Things they haven't thought of in 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'll ask them, do they recall any of their coworkers? And no. And then, 3 days later, they'll have a list of 5 former coworkers for me.
Right.
So,
that's kind of typical for any of us, right? We can't
Yes.
remember what we did 5 minutes ago. And then an hour later, we're like, oh yeah, that's what I was looking for. So,
and then of course, other people have memories that are just as sharp as could be.
Yeah, I don't have one of those. So I wish I did, but I don't.
Yeah. But
anyway,
that's what we do is initially we're going by what this person can tell me. Okay. We're going to get documents. We're going to get social security records. We're going to get military records. We're going to get other records in the future. But for us to start out, we need as much information as possible. That gives Michelle, our trial attorney, that gives her the direction that the case is going to go. And one of the most important things is the venue. So that's the state that the case is going to be filed in.
Okay.
Because there are many, many states, the majority of them in this country, that you would not get a dime for a mesothelioma case in.
Yes.
That's why I'm going all over the place. When I show up at somebody's house in Montana, they're like, you flew here from California? And I'm like, yes, I did. We are not kidding. Okay.
Yes, that's
and
true.
They know that we're not kidding, but you don't file a mesothelioma claim in Montana. So that's just an example of one state. There are states that are just highly favorable, and we're looking for this person to have a connection, having lived or worked in the best state, for the case.
Yeah, because we're always looking at where can I file it the quickest? Where can I get the most for this client? So so there, all the information that we're asking has a purpose.
Yes.
So can you give me, or is there one interview that stands out that you did, which either funny or very emotional or whatever it may be, without giving us any names or just that you would feel comfortable sharing?
Yes, I think that, when you were mentioned earlier, it made me think of this man, and he was just delightful. But he was a taxidermist, and he worked with plaster of Paris in his taxidermy. And that plaster of Paris had been asbestos containing. And he had, a great deal of other exposure, of course, but he was like 78 years old. And the phone rings, and it was his mother.
78 years old and his mother's calling you?
Yes, his mother was calling. I thought that was the cutest thing in the world. I just had to
Oh.
laugh so hard, but he was just delightful. I'm like, whoa. Some people say, we have longevity in my family.
Well,
That man
obviously he
definitely
did.
had longevity in his family, but yeah, it was just
Yeah.
really cute. His mother was calling to check up on him.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That's so cute. I love that. I love
yeah.
that. Leslie, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we end this podcast today?
Well, I just want to share, there is one thing that I would like to share. And, I've been here for 23 years. Obviously, I really believe in our firm. Not just that I really believe in our firm. I literally will not let anybody not go with our firm because there's a situation, what I call meso mills. So these are law firms that will take any case, okay? And basically all cases are handled the same way by them. We don't do that. Every single case that we handle is handled on an individual basis by the merits of that individual case. We're going to do our darndest on every case, but our high value cases, you wouldn't want a high value case to end up with one of these meso mill type law firms.
Yeah.
And
There's
not only that, but we roll out the
Mhm.
red carpet for our clients. We treat our clients just, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to have our cell phone numbers.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
You can call me 24/7. Okay. So we just are so client centric. We take such great care of the clients, and every single, case is handled on an individual basis.
hmm hmm And they do have our cell numbers. Believe me, they've
Yeah.
called me. But
Yes.
one of the, I think it says something about Danziger and Llano that the majority of us have been here a very, very long time.
Yeah.
For mesothelioma. So, obviously, we believe and trust in
Mhm.
Danziger and Llano, and that's why we're still here.
Yep. The process
So,
is just amazing. The way we handle our clients is amazing.
mhm. Leslie, I thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me and sharing what you do for Danziger and Llano. And, we'll have to do this again. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Leslie.
Okay,
You have
Anna,
an
you have a
amazing
great
day.
afternoon.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Uh-huh.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to MESO, the Mesothelioma Podcast. For more information, resources, and support, visit our sponsors Danziger and Llano at dandel.com.